So thanks for coming, and this is an issue that last night I met with the Eastside Action Group, and with Dave and with Jeff, and a small group in the Linmore, not hall, in their school gym, was it? Yeah. And heard for myself what had been missing for me. So I had not many complaints myself formally. I was aware of the issues of the whole of the Lumbercube development, but we have been keeping a very close eye on this for about 4 months. And I was also very aware things changed substantially in March. Then there was the Easter period when things stopped, and then post-Easter there's been a real ramping up of community concerns. But they come to us in various forms. They come through the customer centre, they come through individual emails, the social media, and then there's your own media inquiries. So I was very aware that this is escalating up very fast after Easter. Saw for myself the night before and went out and listened to try to get a feeling for it. I haven't slept overnight over there yet, but now I felt last night I probably heard the range of community concerns. So I certainly heard it and felt it, and it was a very civilised meeting actually, where they're trying to find a solution. We're trying to find a solution, and it was really good open engagement. So there was a variety of responses from, I could see some real anxiety, to how do we get an end conclusion to this, because it's a vexed issue in a community out there. So they reflected really well the collective concerns. They've done a lot of work on it. I felt that, and they represented those concerns to us. Still, it's so varied. So the responses are so varied, and there is quite inconsistencies around my own experience, but there's no inconsistency around their story. I'm quite emphatic about that. And a growing concern, and I think an anxiety now. So it's becoming a real health and wellness issue, the issue of noise. So that's something that we are putting into our thinking. We've discussed it, and every morning it's been an issue for us, and now we've stepped into a very tight plan of action for us, and I'm happier now with the progress that we're getting real urgency to trying to find a resolution here. It's not easy, and there's no one quick fix. What I heard last night was, look, get that mitigation done. So didn't hear close it down. Get the mitigation done, so that we get some peace, especially at night. That was the overwhelming message, and something that Jeff and the team are working on now. So it was good to have them with us, and Councillor Gould was there because he's an Eastside councillor, and he's raised it at council meetings, as have you're aware of the briefings that we've had. So this is a community impact issue, definitely. The impact is more on the noise and the impact on a community, and how they're feeling about the future, really. So we've got to deal with it, and we've got to deal with it within time frame. That would be, do you want to add anything from last night's meeting?
Well, I just reinforce what Mayor Steve says, is that there is a lot of feeling in the community, but they absolutely are in agreement that they want the mill to be successful, and council is wanting to protect new business and jobs. So one of the reasons, and I've been asked to comment in the media before about what I thought of the action group forming itself into an incorporated society. The reason they needed to set up independently is that it's a relatively enclosed or tight area of the Eastside suburbs that's being affected, but the discussion is far wider because there are quite a few people in the wider catchment of Eastside who have jobs on the line at the mill. So there's been some pretty acrimonious discussion going on in social media about those who see the profile of the noise being raised as an issue to be addressed, putting their jobs at risk. So that's one reason why this group set itself up, simply to focus on getting the noise dealt with and resolved to an acceptable level where it's not. I think the other thing that's a real concern, and it's fortunate that we're on the doorstep of the school holidays, is the schools being impacted by it. And that was something that came through at last night's meeting. But I've now been to 4 meetings of the Eastside Residents Action Group, and they are, after last night, they are greatly heartened by the fact that our Chief Executive was able to set out a plan, that councillors now have a plan to get a resolution to this matter, and that'll be our focus.
Okay, so we've got a range of information for you, which some of it will go through, some of it will leave for you for your information. So Marion, if you could hand out the various pieces that we've got. So there's a presentation that I'll some charts and pictures which give you some background information. The first one on the noise decibel system that we operate against, and then some information on the geographical area affected, the number of complaints that we've received and how those have been trending and so on. So you've got you're walking away with a lot of information. But if I can just give a bit of context, and what I'd like to do is that this little presentation I'll just very quickly walk through, and what it will give you is a bit of background about how did we get here, what are we doing at the moment, and where do we see this going out into the future. So just by way of background, just council's role in the middle of this I think is important. So we've got to ensure a balance. We've got a role to ensure that Rotorua is a good place to live. And so the sorts of things that we're hearing from residents as to their experiences is very, very concerning. But equally so, we've got a role in ensuring that businesses can do business. And so we've got to steer a course here that is one of balance and acting wisely to ensure a good outcome for residents and a good outcome for the business. This though is an extremely complex process because we need to operate within a legal framework, that's the Resource Management Act, and we need to be taking our district plan, if you like, as our key way that we're actually looking to guide us through within. The noise environment in Linmore is also extremely complex. So we've got a noise issue that is changing in nature. So since the beginning of the year, the Lumbercube operation have put in place a number of mitigating strategies that has meant that the noise has changed. The noise landscape of Linmore is very different. So if you actually are in one place in Linmore and seek to understand the Lumbercube noise, you'll think it looks like X. But then if you drive up the road a kilometre, you'll get a completely different picture of what the Lumbercube operation sounds like. Some residents say that this is a difficult situation. They're having problems sleeping and they're hearing large bangs and clanks and so on. Other people are at the other end of the spectrum saying, we don't understand what this is about. So this is a very highly subjective and very complex situation for us to be working through. So Our teams have been extremely busy on this. So on Tuesday night, we were out. We were out with the mayor and the deputy mayor and our team. So that was from, I think it was around about 8:30 through to 11:30 at night. And understanding what our teams are doing. They were in turnout until about 3:30 that night. Now, that's not unusual. This is actually the pattern that the council regulatory staff have been following. They've got 2 shifts on at the moment, 1 shift during daytime hours, 1 shift at night. And there are pairs of people working. One person is looking to monitor what's happening on the mill site, looking to actually see how the loaders are working and so on. And the other person is up in the back of Linmore and they're in constant phone conversation. So one will be saying, look, a log was just dropped or whatever, did you hear that? And the other person is monitoring the noise impact of whatever that event was. We're starting to get to a point where our view at the moment is that in terms of our district plan, the noise levels that we're hearing are consistently below the 40 decibel threshold. That's according to the district plan. Having said that though, we're starting to also understand that that's not really the problem. The background noise level is, in some people's views, an issue, but generally the complaints are saying, look, we've been woken up by a large bang or a clattering noise that's just happened and I was woken up by it and it's now not there. So that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with noise that seems to be interfering with people's sleep, that's interfering with meetings, that's interfering with teachers running classrooms, but it's sporadic in nature. That's what we're starting to work with at the moment, trying to get a clear view is what is this noise, where is it coming from, and what is the cause of it.
And we
that's
heard
what our
that
teams
last
are doing.
night. So we heard different noises last night in the meeting room.
One of your pictures, which is a little map there, gives you an idea of the affected area, which is cross-hatched. And we've highlighted that Lumber Cube is not the only operation there. When we were out, for example, and I think it was Awatere Terrace, that night you couldn't hear Lumber Cube. There was another operation that had started a planing function, and so they had, over that evening, left some of the doors open due to a delivery. And so Lumber Cube was actually almost overridden by another operation completely. So we've got a complex sound environment that we're also trying to understand. The key thing from our point of view is that all of the operators, Lumber Cube inclusive, are very open to work with us. They have on a daily basis been talking with us about what they're doing and looking to try and say, Council, what are you hearing and what can we do to actually reduce this noise profile? So we're confident that we've got a group of businesses that are concerned and are wanting to work alongside Council to make a difference. So we've covered off the monitoring strategy. The other thing that we're about to change, and will be changing in fact today, is the way that we're dealing with complaints. Up until this point, we've been looking at a complaint process which is fairly consistent with how we would deal with any noise complaint process. Whereas in the Eastside complaints, we're really moving into a different phase. What we're wanting now to actually get from people is what are their experiences? What are the things that are really concerning them about nighttime noise? Have they just been woken up? What woke them up? Is it still there? So we're wanting to get much more detailed views from people about their experiences. So what we've got is a new 0800 number. We've got a new line in council now that is dedicated to the Eastside noise issue. And that will allow people to tell us about what's happening for them. What impact is it actually having for their family? And what is actually from their perspective, what is the major issue? So we can be then focusing our regulatory response very much in tune with what are people concerned about. The heat map gives you an idea of the complaints. As you can see, there's about 100 properties listed there or indicated there. Some of those properties are situations where we've received 20, 30, 70 complaints over the subsequent month. And so our communication strategy is that where people are obviously being highly affected, we're going to be going to visit them. So some of our staff will be visiting those families and sitting down with them and saying, you know, how's this affecting you? What are you hearing? What is it about this that is actually proven particularly significant for your family? So where to from here? This week we've got a noise expert that is coming up from Wellington. He's arriving Thursday and will be spending the day with us on Friday. The purpose of that visit is twofold. On one hand, we've got a lot of information we've collected, and what he will be doing is peer reviewing that to ensure that our recording, the observations that we're making are accurate and that they're reliable. He'll also be looking at the operation through his eyes and saying, what does he see in terms of the sources of these noise? What are the things that could be done that haven't been done so far? What is the nature of the mill's mitigation strategy? Is that adequate or not? So he'll be giving us some information on those angles. The other thing that we're obviously looking to, and a lot of people are asking about, is are we going to take legal action here? Well, at the moment, we're confident that we're working well with the mill. But at the same time, what we're also preparing is a case if we need to take action through the Environment Court to actually get traction on something that we don't feel is actually adequate, then we're preparing for that eventuality as well. But I'd like to stress the fact that at this particular point, we feel confident that the mill is very open to the sort of feedback we're providing, and what we've had is very fast turnaround of issues being remediated. Last week, for example, we had a loader that was clearly making a lot of noise. Our noise team picked that up, and today that loader is actually being used in a totally different way. The mill at the same time yesterday set up a hotline for us, and so our noise monitoring staff who are out there on the field can simply ring the mill now and say, look, we've got a problem with the way this is happening. It's a particular strategy that we think is causing noise, and the mill have undertaken to us that they will immediately change that. So we've got good cooperation happening at this point in time. But I think that's probably all I want to go through. If there's any other questions or comments that you want to make, happy to spend some time answering those.
Can I just add one last comment, and that is just the tensions in the community. So, you know, I am friends and neighbours and clubmates with a whole lot of people who are affected by this, and I have immediate neighbours who have no effects from the mill, and I have immediate neighbours who are seriously impacted, and so it's unhelpful if people are arguing amongst themselves, either over jobs versus impact on daily lives, or whether you're dreaming or it's real. So it is real for certain people. Linmore is a suburb that when my parents-in-law moved there, they built a house pretty much out on a farm, and people said, why are you building out there in the Wops? So there are old housing stock out there with no insulation and single glazing, and right next door there can be an infill house that's modern, fully insulated and less impacted, or just down below a hill. So people, I think, need to be respectful of the impact on individual households, whereas they might not be affected to the same degree. So I would just ask that people provide their feedback to council rather than get into a debate amongst themselves, because I know that Eastside Residents Action Group are feeling a lot of pressure and taking a lot of heat on social media with some of the tensions within the community, and that's the job of council, is to sort that out and get a plan to resolve the issue.
We're meeting with the Eastside Community Group next week to share the sound expert position with us, and that's constructive. And I think it's really great there is a group that have got together, because it's helped us have a point of contact without putting too much burden on them. We can pick up a lot of the things that they were feeling last night that they were having to advocate to us, and good to have heard them. So that ongoing relationship is going to be important for the development of the whole East Side in future too, with other issues like the Tenai Road, like any further development that may happen out in that community. And we haven't had that. We've got the Makoia Community Association who work very closely with us, but this is a different group that's formed.
Peaks at over 40 decibels during the night shift? Or have they all been under 40 dB?
No, well, this is, when I say this is a very much a changing landscape. Certainly, when we were first monitoring within the first couple of nights that the mill was operating, we got one reading which I think was somewhere around about 46 dB area. Subsequent to that though, the range has been from early 30s, 33, 34 to 39 and 40. So that's been the range certainly over the last fortnight.
So there has been records of noise peaking at over 40 decibels. It's just the limit under the resource consent. So you're talking about timeframes. You haven't put a time frame down. So when do you think this issue will be resolved?
Well, you'd love to wave a magic wand. I'd love to. I'd love it to go away.
Yeah.
You know, so we can peacefully coexist together actually, but it's not going to. We have to have a very clear plan of what our action is going to be by the end of this month.
Okay. So you're saying by the end of this month, with that testing and all of that information that you're hoping to get from the community, that you'll be able to tell the site residents by this date?
Or one way or
If
other,
this is
what
not
we're
done,
going to
or
do.
one way or the other. Yeah. Cool.
They need certainty. I could see that.
Yeah. So looking at this, it's great. Apart from, you know, having a dedicated complaints line and a complaints process, what has actually changed? So
Well, yeah.
from what I'm hearing is that, okay, you've got all of this email, you can phone the dedicated line, but really nothing's going to change for those people out there at all.
But we need to build up a database.
Yeah. And you have,
Yeah.
you've had
And
since September last year?
Yeah, but you get
to do that?
complaints. You get complaints, but they didn't specify. It was we were only investigating and
Okay.
chasing. There is a complaint and there is a noise,
Yeah.
and this is this level.
So
Now
would it
we're
be-
asking, tell us what, you know, have you ever complained before?
Yeah.
Are you in a new area altogether to us? Did you get back to sleep? You know, tell us a bit more about
Right. So
the
rather than
type.
And
just
since September last year, the mill itself the company has spent 1.5 million
That's right, yeah.
on works to address the muffling of the sound.
Mhm.
Some of that's been successful, so there's been a marked reduction in complaints from the Poets Corner side. And again, I have friends over there who say, now I don't hear it.
Yeah.
But it can be extremely strange. You know, Tuesday last week we got 3 complaints in only overnight, and they were from Poets Corner. But 2 nights later, we got something like 70 from Linmore.
Right.
So that's the variables and the uncertainties. But what's been done since last September? So the mill has worked towards a program set out by Marshall Day, their noise consultants, on trying to muffle the noise, and also they've dealt with some operator issues in their lug yard, which has, but you know, jobs can change and operators can change, and so you know, there has been significant work done, but the problem remains, and it's random, and it's going there, living there. I know that it can be quite sporadic. When there'll be a problem night, when there'll be a quiet, peaceful night.
Matt, there is also there was a feeling from the group last night that we can shut it down, and that's quite complex too.
Mm.
So we can't do that sort of action until we built our case. So that's what we're doing. And they understood that, though they'd like it to be turned off at night.
Yeah.
Flick off the switch at night and flick it on in the morning. You do that, council, and we're all happy. You make that announcement, Steve, and, you know, that'd be great for us all.
But again, sorry.
But you have to flick off the switch to get the fix is a process that we've got to work through, and that's what we're doing, and there's a very tight time frame around that process.
So that's been ramped up, would it be fair to say, post-Easter, when there was a shutdown,
Yep.
and then there were still complaints
Yep.
coming, so it was obvious at that stage there were other people or organisations making noise. It wasn't
Yep.
just Lumbercube.
Yeah.
And then obviously when they switched back on after Easter, we see a big spike in those complaints. And is that, what I'm trying to say is it been taken a lot more seriously since that time?
So Matt,
So instead of just someone
Yeah.
ringing up and say, I can hear some noise, I'll bet you it's Lumbercube, now you're wanting to people to ask, when exactly did you hear it?
Explain it.
Explain it,
For us, please.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's happening, I think what will happen is that, as I said, we've got staff on the ground outside the mill, up in Linmore, monitoring what's happening. The thing that we've had over the last couple of weeks is that on one night we had complaints about beeping noises. Now that wasn't Lumbercube, it was one of the other operations, but the following night no one would have heard the beeping noises because our staff had already followed it up and the operator had actually removed the beepers from the machines.
Yeah.
So that's what will happen also this week, that if we see handling techniques either in Lumbercube or if we hear noise from another operation, our staff will be tracking it, finding where it's from, looking to see if there's any remediation that can be done, and it will be done. We're confident that actually all of the operators here, inclusive of Lumbercube, are very open to receiving feedback from our staff to say if it's a noisy loader or if it's a particular way something's been done that is causing clashing noises or whatever. If we say this is a problem, they will change it, and that's what you will see change this week.
And I think the most frequently asked fair question is, the mill is required to supply a noise compliance certificate from their sound engineers.
Yep.
It hasn't yet been forthcoming because the sound engineers aren't yet satisfied that everything has been got right. So for me, as a resident of the affected area, and that sort of shows some sign of hope that things will continue to be worked on and work will still be done. But there's a lot of sort of urgency to see that actually materialise. So that's where council bringing in its own sound advisor is going to be very helpful, helping us reach a position.
Right. And that was done in-house previous.
Still is being done
Sounds
in-house, but
So you bring
you
in
have
another
another expert in.
An expert, yeah. We have our own regulatory staff who are, they're, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? They're trained
Professionals.
to operate the equipment, and
They're
the equipment is calibrated. So we all run around with noise meters on our cell phones, but they're all different. The one that's actually
Yeah.
been calibrated to give an accurate
I
reading
think we
on the
can
sound.
argue that stuff till the police come
You know,
home.
it's-
For
we've got
me,
fine
the
stuff.
issue is, it's a noise. It's having a huge impact on a community, and we want to help that community to find a solution with a time frame.
Steve, you talked about an urgency now and putting a plan in place. Why is this happening now, since this has been an ongoing issue for months? Why have you just met with the residents group?
There wasn't a residents group. There hasn't been a residents group, so now there is. And I was always open to meeting them. It is only elevated to this level after Easter, and it's really from when the night operation came in. I think you could tolerate the noise during the day. You know, we can hear noises during the day, traffic and then, but at night time it has a different impact. So it's now got a very different impact.
And do we have a timeline when these home visits will start?
Well, from what I understand, I think it's actually today. So we'll be contacting people today. I just want to add to the time frame. If we go back to the beginning of the year, we were talking to Lumbercube about their daytime operation, And it was almost a similar conversation in terms of were they able to comply with the district plan limits for daytime operation, and we were closely monitoring those. So it's not that this has been an ongoing issue, this is actually a whole set of sequenced issues that have actually dealt with over a number of stages.
If I go back, you know, when Touch Cover closed, it was a month after the election, and we were being begged to find something to fill that industrial site, and here it is. And at this stage, it needs some more work to make it work for the community. There were a couple there last night that profoundly moved me, that live over the road, that never were bothered by the noise of the old mill, wanted the new mill, but are profoundly affected by the noise of the nighttime operations. That's the bit we've got to focus on.
And in terms of human resources, I mean, how many staff are dedicated to this issue?
Oh,
You want to count
that's a
politicians?
that's a very good question. We've got at any one time during the day, there'll be 2 to 3 staff members sort of working on this. But of course, they're working shifts, so immediately just in the monitoring side, we've got 4 to 6 people actually just dealing with us. In addition to that, we've got our communications team who's producing information for people. We've got a legal work stream that's going on. The executive team are meeting twice a day on this matter to make sure that our plan is actually in place and is actually progressing. So I would hesitate to count the numbers of people, but it's a significant number.
Dave, you mentioned the mill certificate. If I could just get a bit of clarification around that. You said they're obliged, I presume, to provide something, and they haven't. I mean, are they allowed just to continue operating indefinitely in lieu of that being provided?
Well, I might pass that one to Jeff to answer.
Right.
But the answer is, as long as they are working towards achieving that compliance,
Okay.
then council's a bit hamstrung in what we can
Okay.
do. That's my understanding, but I'll pass that to Jeff.
Well, that's it, and Dave's answered it very well. Our role here is that even once they put the certificate on the table, in some ways things don't change. We've still got the role to monitor whether in fact the operation today and in any day is actually compliant with our district plan, and at the same time, if we receive complaints of noise which is interfering with functions or activities, we still have to investigate them. So in some ways, the noise certificate is a bit of a moot point. It doesn't provide absolute certainty to anyone that the operation can continue in the way that it is.
You might have already, sorry.
We'll say it's around, I believe, isn't it around 1,400 in total noise complaints roughly so far?
Yep.
I mean, I presume, has there ever been any other issue that's attracted anywhere near that many noise complaints? I mean, have you ever, is this
Not my
really way
time.
up above?
No, not my
Not
time.
either.
In Rotorua, I can't comment, but look, my previous work in Auckland, with a large metropolitan area, I was responsible for, in some ways, with the regional facilities, we ran concerts, and they could attract large numbers of complaints. Equally so in Auckland, you've got large industrial areas that at times do interface through to residential areas. So this sort of situation, while it may be unique in Rotorua, is in no means unique in the broader scheme of things, because cities have industrial areas, they have activities that actually interfere with the residential population, and so you do get this when you get coexistence of activities happening.
Western Springs.
Western Springs would be a very good example. I think the deputy mayor provided or used the comment, it's the growing pains of Rotorua.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to a point, that's I think true.
When are you expecting the compliance certificate from Mamakyu?
We'll be talking with the mill about that again today.
Okay, so,
This is the
it's been
escalation of the
obviously
plan.
ongoing for months and months and months, in fact, September last year, still waiting on a noise compliance certificate from them. Are you going to be putting pressure on them to deliver that?
Well, what we're really interested in at the moment, as I say, the compliance certificate, why going to actually deliver a lot for the residents necessarily of Linmore. So what we want to have is a clear conversation between the companies that are involved in the production of the noise certificate and the noise mitigation strategy. We need to get those people together to talk through what's happening at the moment and how can we mitigate it.
Matt, I think that's the issue. I agree with
I
Jeff.
thought it's a fairly simple question. Is there a time frame on that?
When I
rather
said
than-
to you by the end of the month, we need to have clarity on our decision going forward.
So is that when you're wanting Touchy-Carla to provide that information?
Yes, but it's not the, it may not
Well, I know
cure
it's
the
not the
ills.
answer, but
Yeah.
it's something your council and everyone's been waiting on for quite some time.
Yeah, and look, you're asking
Still
your
hasn't, yeah.
consultant to put their signature to a bit of paper
Yes.
that they have to stand behind
Yep.
in potentially
understand that.
civil actions in the future.
Yes.
So our understanding is that their sound consultant's work has been peer reviewed by the other
Mm. And
preeminent
that may not,
consultant.
you
in
may
New
not be able to push the timing, you know, and that's the danger of saying it'll all be cured by the end of the
Yeah.
month. Yeah.
As regards this idea that these investigations are forming part of a kind of an evidence gathering that may or may not be required if legal action occurs, with regards specifically to legal action, I mean, do you have in mind any kind of trigger points or anything from your side of the table that you think would trigger that process?
Well, I think the key trigger is that when we stop being confident that we can get change happening to a level that is acceptable to the residents. If we feel that we've hit a wall at any point at all where we're feeling,
We're not
gosh,
moving.
this is it.
Yeah.
We're not getting anywhere forward.
Mm.
Then that's the trigger point.
So it's largely dependent on how cooperative you see Lumbercube and others being.
Very much
Yeah.
so.
Great.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much
All right.
for coming.